Hey everybody, how you doing? And welcome to episode number 128 of the John Riley Project. It's Sunday, April 19th, 2020, and we are broadcasting, as we always do, from the city and the country, Poway, California. And of course, this episode is brought to you by our friends from PowayStore.com. Man, I got a lot I want to get into, and I was challenging myself. I want to put together a podcast today that was completely unrelated to COVID-19, unrelated to the coronavirus, unrelated to the economic fallout from the coronavirus, unrelated to the health matters, health issues with the coronavirus. I wanted to while the rest of the world is zigging, I wanted to zag. And so I challenged myself and I thought, what are some topics we can discuss? And just thinking about a few things that are top of mind, and that's what we're going to get into today. We're going to talk a little bit about Daryl Hall from the band Hall Oates. I want to talk about Malachi Flynn, the basketball player from San Diego State University. I'm going to talk a little bit about what my one of my listeners referred to as the JRP Sine Wave. We'll talk a little bit about that, and if we have time, I want to get into this fun topic of Swedish death cleaning, which I think would be kind of a fun one to explore. But yeah, this podcast is all about the our higher purpose, about our inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I think, hey, all of this fits in. That's the kind of the framework that we work upon. But before we get into Daryl Hall and Malachi Flynn, I just want to touch on this sine wave thing. And one of my listeners was commenting on this with me over the weekend, and they said that they listened to episode number 127, and that was the one we were talking about the COVID-19 protesters. And he said that listening to the podcast was like a sine wave. He said he would listen to what we were talking about, and he would go from loving what I was saying to really not liking what I'm saying at all, to suddenly loving what I was saying, and then suddenly not liking at all what I was talking about. And he was riding this sine wave throughout the podcast, and he thought it was interesting that he noticed that. And when he explained that to me, I said, "Oh, that's fantastic, actually, that's what you experience." Because a lot of times when we get our media, you'll tune into, let's just say, Fox News or MSNBC or the Wall Street Journal, and they typically are very, how should I say, they're either very left-wing or very right-wing or very corporate, status quo, supportive of the establishment, and they kind of all stay in their lane. But, I'm politically independent, so my views sometimes are in the liberal world, sometimes in the conservative world, sometimes in a very different place. I like to think of it as sort of the liberty world is a lot of what we talk about. I mean, after all, it's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's what this podcast is about. So I know, maybe have you experienced that listening or watching to this podcast? Do you go from liking what I'm talking about to disliking and then suddenly liking again? Is it that back and forth? I like it. And I hope that when you are listening or viewing this podcast, I'm hoping that you get something out of it. I hope I'm opening you up to new ideas, new perspectives on things. I mean, we can all tune in to our favorite news media and kind of get spoon-fed exactly what we want to hear. I like to try to bring up topics that are going to challenge the status quo and in some cases generate some really good discussion. And that's a big part of why I have this podcast, is to have that sort of civil, rational conversation about some of these, frankly, heavy issues. I mean, I've been going on Facebook lately, and maybe people are just feeling cooped up. I see brawls and flame wars going on in social media, and it's something. But I just like talking through things. And when we have a guest here, sometimes guests they have different opinions, different perspectives. I love having guests on this podcast, and we're starting to get more guest inquiries. We're going to be doing more of this on Zoom. So love that. So let me just put that out there. If you know anyone that would like to be a guest on this podcast, please reach out to me. Go to my website at johnrileyproject.com, and there's all sorts of ways you can connect with me. But even when we're doing our interviews with some of our guests, some of the things we learn from those guests, some of the things I like, some of the things I dislike. And even in the areas where we don't have agreement, I just love exploring it. understanding why people think the way they do, what are the values and principles that drive them to those opinions. I think it's just fascinating stuff. So, like I said, when I heard there was a sine wave that in terms of how people felt listening or viewing this podcast, it made me smile. Now, today's podcast, we're not going to really do much politics at all. So maybe it's going to be a smoother, steady ride than an up and down roller coaster. But let's dig in. I want to talk about Daryl Hall. And, Daryl Hall is from the rock band Hall Oates. And I've commented on this before that about 5-6 years ago, I made a decision that there were 3 artists, or bands that I wanted to see. Now that I'm in my 50s, I just want to make sure I get to see these guys. And the first band was Rush, and I got to see them, and it was a fantastic show. And they ended up, stopping touring within less than a year after that show where I saw them here in San Diego. So I got them right at the end. I was lucky. My second artist I wanted to see was Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and unfortunately, Tom Petty passed away suddenly, far too young. But the third act or artist I want to see is Daryl Hall and John Oates, and these 2 guys are really big influences on me. We talk about the music that is most important to you in your life, and it's usually the music that's popular in your senior year of high school. And I remember someone told me that a long time ago, and that makes a lot of sense because that's when music really becomes an important part of your life. And the senior year of high school is such a special time in a person's life that the music makes a key difference. The music is the soundtrack of your senior year of high school. So for me, I graduated in 1982. And so that was right in the heyday of Hall & Oates when they were on MTV, and MTV was a new thing then. And so, I had known of Hall & Oates in the 70s, but in the 80s, they kind of went to a new place, not unlike ZZ Top, who went to a new place once they entered the video age. Always wanted to see Hall & Oates. And I was very fortunate. For my birthday, my wife bought me tickets, for the 2 of us to go see Hall & Oates down at the amphitheater in Chula Vista. And I was all excited. And it's in May, in late May. And of course, that concert was canceled. So we're, trying to figure out how to get our money back from that. But I'm hoping that I'll have another opportunity. But a lot of they're talking about having concerts canceled, not just through 2020, but into 2021. We may not see live concerts. So, I may not get a chance to see Daryl Hall and John Oates, but I do hope to do so. But anyways, last night, I was just hanging out, and sometimes I get on YouTube and I'm watching things, and I just started watching more of the TV show, and it's called Live from Daryl's House. And now, if you've ever seen it, but Daryl Hall has this house, I think it's in Pennsylvania, back in the country area, and he lives there, but he also has this studio where he invites famous musicians to come in and jam with his band. And sometimes they'll sing songs that the famous musician is known for. Sometimes they'll sing Hall & Oates songs, and it's collaborative, and it's fun to watch because it's real. It's not like a performance, although it is a performance, but you're seeing, some of the grittiness of what goes on in some of these rehearsals. And I just love the show. I think it's terrific. And I had mentioned a few podcasts ago, there was an episode where he appeared with the band Finger 11, and they did a cover of Bill Withers' song Ain't No Sunshine, and it's a fabulous cover. I encourage you to go check it out. It's not Bill Withers, but it's still very good. But anyways, I saw a bunch of episodes last night, and they were just fantastic. And one of them was with Joe Walsh, from the Eagles, and he came on there, and it was interesting. They did all of his solo stuff. So they did Funk 49 and Rocky Mountain Way and Life's Been Good, and they really didn't do many Eagles songs, if I recall, which was interesting. But Joe Walsh, man, that guy is something. He talked a lot about the state of the music industry and how young people are trying to, make a career in music, but there's no money selling albums like there used to be. So he's wondering what the future of the music industry is going to be. He was also commenting about how music nowadays is a drum machine and samples and a lot of these live concerts have lost that magic of, the human artistry that goes into the performance, that specialness when, a group of musicians come together to create something magnificent. And I thought he was absolutely right. So he was saying, yeah, the music of today, he thinks lacks the magic. Now, that's easy for some of us that are, that's more of an okay boomer thing, I think, where, some of us folks that are a little bit older, we always reflect on our own music and why it's important to us and what makes it special. But I saw Joe Walsh, my wife and I, we went and saw him at the Oceanside Pier. And it was a concert probably like in like the late 90s. And man, well, that was a great show. And it was Joe Walsh, and he had 3 musicians with him. There was a keyboard player, a bass player, and a drummer, and then Joe Walsh on guitar. And these 3 other musicians that were with him, all of them were in their 20s. And Joe Walsh at the time was probably in his 50s or 60s. And what a great show. And Walsh is just so awesome. He's funnier than hell, and just incredibly talented with the guitar. I mean, and so what he was doing collaboratively with Daryl Hall was just really special. And I'd encourage you to go check that out. And the other cool part of the show live at Daryl's house is that when they have the artists that come in and they collaborate, they also take breaks. They cook food, they eat together, and they're just hanging out at Daryl's house. And so in this one episode, they had what kind of a chef was it? I can't recall what the type of food was, but the chef was explaining how she goes about this recipe, and they always try to get the artists in there to help them in the kitchen, just like a cooking segment on the Today Show. And there's Joe Walsh, man. He's just over the stove and cooking his food, stirring the pot. And I'm thinking, man, this is how I'm spending my Saturday nights, watching Joe Walsh cook a meal for Daryl Hall and all of his guys. But it was great. And then I saw the episode with Billy Gibbons, and it was Billy Gibbons, of course, the guitar player from ZZ Top. That was even better than the Joe Walsh. I mean, the Billy Gibbons one was just really, really good. And they did a lot of the great, ZZ Top songs like Thunderbird, Sharp Dressed Man, LaGrange, just really great blues music, that kind of Texas boogie stuff. And wow, it was a great show. And then, Billy Gibbons got the big beard, the whole thing, and just a great guy, and it was cool to see him. And of course, they did a cooking segment with Billy Gibbons, and then they were, making this special guacamole, and it was great, so it's just a really good show. And I don't know if you've seen the ZZ Top documentary that's on Netflix, and it's really, really good. And it talks about how ZZ Top got started in the mid-'60s, and how they came about their band name. And the ZZ Top is kind of a spinoff of B.B. King, because they liked those initials to start the name of a band. But it went through, like, that documentary on Netflix was great because they talked about, what do they call it? The Worldwide Texas Tour, where the ZZ Top, what made them special was Texas. They embraced the Texas brand. And so when they went on their tour, they would bring like big longhorn cattle and all kinds of animals and vultures and they brought the whole Texas experience with them when they played those shows in the 70s, which was just something. So that was a really good documentary on Netflix. But it was just great seeing Billy Gibbons, jamming with Daryl Hall and those guys, and I just loved it. And then there was a next episode I watched, was the one with the OJs. The OJs, just this great, R&B band from the 70s, and they're part of that Philly sound. And Daryl Hall is from Philadelphia, and he went to Temple University. That's how he met John Oates, and he was talking about how, when he was a young kid and he was a teenager, he hung out with the Temptations. And, so his roots are very much in, that R&B kind of music. And then to see the OJs come over, Love Train and like so many great songs that they did. And it was great to see there's 3 of the guys. I know the band at least the singers have changed a little bit over time, but definitely two of those three were definitely originals, and they were fantastic. So that was a good one. And then he also did an episode with Cheap Trick. And so there's Robin Zander and Rick Nielson and Tom Peterson, and they're all there. And that was a fun one too. I mean, musically, it wasn't as entertaining of an episode, but from a personality perspective, you can tell. And Daryl Hall talked about it, where when Cheap Trick was big in the 70s, Hall Oates was getting started in the 70s. So they had a lot of, they were old friends. And I think Daryl Hall even mentioned that he lived with Tom Peterson. Tom Peterson, the bass player from Cheap Trick, he's famous for playing, I think it's a 12-string bass. So normally a bass has 4 strings, and for each of those regular 4 strings, there were 3 individual strings. So 4 times 3, 12. So Tom Peterson, pretty famous for that. But it was great to see those guys. And again, it's cool to see these artists outside their element and to see them collaboratively working with each other in a studio with Daryl Hall's band. And these guys are just top notch, to see them jam with them. And they're just so versatile, and they pick up on the other guy's music really well, and they play off each other well. Total pros. And wow, a lot of fun to watch that. But man, these guys are getting old. And so as I was preparing these show notes, I looked them up, and these episodes I watch, I think were probably recorded about 8 years ago. But today, Joe Walsh is 72 years old. Man, 72. Billy Gibbons is 70. And then 2 of the main guys from the OJs, Eddie Levert is 77 and Walter Williams is 76. And I was just reading that they're going to tour, or at least they plan to tour for 1 more year, and they were going to retire. So, we always make jokes about the Rolling Stones and how they're jamming into their 70s. Well, they're not alone, man. A lot of these other guys are in their 70s, and they look great. They look fantastic. They're healthy. They're full of energy, and they still got their chops. They're really good. So yeah, Eddie Levert, Walter Williams, 77 and 76 years old, respectively. Robin Zander, the singer from Cheap Trick, is 67. Rick Nielson, the guitar player from Cheap Trick, 71. Tom Peterson, 69. So wow. So it won't be too long. We're going to start seeing some more of these icons pass, but it's unbelievable, like how much they're older, and I think to myself, well, I'm older too. We're all getting older, and it's just natural. But even Daryl Hall and John Oates, and I told you, I was hoping to see them. The concert in May was canceled, unfortunately, and my wife had got really good tickets, and I was really looking forward to that. We were going to go backstage and actually get our pictures taken with them. It would have been awesome. Well, it ended up, getting canceled, but Daryl Hall is 73 years old, and John Oates is 72. So how much longer are those guys going to be, performing and doing worldwide tours? And you're in their 70s, it's something. So it's just amazing. And so then after I was watching all these live at Daryl's house episodes, then I started watching, some of the Hall Oates videos, some of the Hall Oates performance when they were inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which was pretty cool. And then there was an interview that Daryl Hall did with Charlie Rose that was really good. And it was really interesting to hear Daryl. And you could tell he's very proud of what he's accomplished. And he should be. I mean, he's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and he's just a fantastic musician, and he's done so much in his career. But, he's not shy, and he's very boastful, and he believes that he, is legit, and he is, in my opinion, but he doesn't back down from it at all. But one thing that was interesting that he talked about in the Charlie Rose interview is how people would refer to the term as blue-eyed soul. And, that's sort of a call out to saying white people that play or sing soul music. And you could tell that really upset him because he grew up in the Philadelphia area. He grew up in a mixed race neighborhood. So to him, there wasn't black music and white music. It was just music. It was Philadelphia music. And then, in his teenage years, he legitimately hung out with the Temptations. He was kind of like their gopher, for some of their shows. And so he feels like he's part of the R&B scene, part of the soul music scene, and feels like he's a legitimate guy there. But when he's positioned as Blue-Eyed Soul, it's almost like a backhanded compliment. And boy, it irked him so much. And I get it. I understand why. Because he's just a very talented guy, and he should just be known, in my opinion, as a soul singer just as much as anyone else. But it's sad how a lot of music, people will say, oh, that's black music or that's white music, when really, why do we need to do that? I mean, you look at R&B from the 1960s, which many people would have said is black music. That's fantastic music, and music that people of all races enjoy. And then even if you get into today, with hip hop, and I mean, there's a lot of obviously black hip hop artists, but there are white hip hop artists and Asian hip hop artists and mixed race hip hop artists, and hip hop is popular with people of all races. So it's a shame that there still is a little bit of that context of categorizing music by race. But it's just interesting. So, I get in these YouTube things where I'll just keep going down the rabbit hole, and the next thing I know, it's like 6 hours later. And I just really enjoyed it. And I just wanted to share with you that I really enjoyed it, because music's important. And, think about the music that you like to listen to when you were a senior in high school. And I think that is some of the most important music in a person's life. And for me, Hall Oates is a big part of that. So was Tom Petty. So was Rush. All three of them hugely popular in my senior year of high school. So just something. So I just really enjoyed it. I wanted to share that with you. Okay, hey, how about a big shout out to our sponsor, PowayStore.com. Hey, you know what? They contacted me today, and they just changed their website, and they're doing 20% off all the shirts. And so they've got shirts celebrating Poway, the city and the country. They got this new shirt that's celebrating Twin Peaks. So it's a Twin Peaks shirt just for Poway, and they come in, the unisex t-shirt, for men and women, but also the slimmer fitting women's version of the shirt is available. And there's, a whole bunch of different shirts, long sleeve shirts, t-shirts. They're all 20% off on the website at PowayStore.com. They even have some neck gaiters, which you can wear as a mask, during this COVID crisis. And they also keep your face warm if you happen to be out on a brisk walk or a hike up Iron Mountain. But yeah, these two neck gaiters, there's one that's, really all about Lake Poway. It's a beautiful photo of Lake Poway built into this, face mask neck gaiter. And then there's another one of Iron Mountain. So go check those out too. But all the shirts, 20% off through the end of April. And then also, hey, you want to get on the mailing list for the John Riley Project? I just invite you to come out to my website, johnrileyproject.com/subscribe. There you can get on our mailing list, and we'll do, newsletters from time to time, give you a little insight on the things we're working on in the podcast, what's happening behind the scenes. So please subscribe to the John Riley Project mailing list at johnrileyproject.com /subscribe. Okay, now let's talk about Malachi Flynn. And, Malachi Flynn, the guard that played at San Diego State University, just announced that he is going into the NBA draft. And, man, I'm just really proud of him. I think what he accomplished this past year for San Diego State University is just unbelievable. And he did everything that was asked of him. I mean, he was the Mountain West Player of the Year, the Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year. And, there was a lot of, talk. Would he come back for his senior year at San Diego State? Would he enter the draft? And he was talking with his agents, and agents have been talking to a lot of the NBA general managers. They're saying he's probably a late first-round pick, maybe an early second-round pick. And, Brian Dutcher and the staff there, they say, man, if you could potentially get picked in the first round, it's a no-brainer. You got to go into the draft. And so he decided to go for it. And, normally what these college students will do, if they aren't sure if they're going to go into the draft or not, they usually have those workouts with the NBA teams during the months of April and May leading up to the draft, which I think is in June normally. Well, all those workouts have been canceled because of the whole coronavirus thing. So he didn't really have a chance to sort of put his toe in the water and then pull out if it didn't look good. So he just decided to go all in. And I just think it's great. I mean, I was just reading more about Malachi Flynn, and, he's not a big guy. He's only 6'1", but just a really special player. Score 6'1". He was the defensive player of the year in the Mountain West. You think a defensive player of the year would be some 7-foot shot blocker guy, but it was Malachi Flynn. And I was looking at what he has accomplished. I mean, in high school, when he was a freshman, he was only 5'2". Imagine that. On the freshman team in high school, 5'2", and then he grew to 5'6" as a sophomore, and then eventually had a growth spurt to get to his current height of 6'1". And man, if you're going to go play in the NBA and be 6 feet tall or 6 feet 1 inch, man, you got to be a fighter. You got to be a scrappy player to be able to play at that high level. But that he can do it. He's going to outplay everybody in terms of his IQ. I mean, the guy is brilliant on the floor. He knows when to get his teammates involved. He knows when to make the extra pass. He knows when he has to step up and be a scorer. And he knows on defense how to do the full court press and really clamp down defensively on players and get so many steals. So he's ready, and he's humble. Talking about Daryl Hall, and he's kind of cocky to a great degree. But Malachi Flynn, very humble guy, which I think could serve him well going into the NBA, especially since he's not coming in as like a 6'8" kind of a guard. A 6'1" guard, he's going to have a bit of humility going in and then kind of work his way through. But I just have great confidence. I mean, his playmaking was just great. I mean, how about that shot at the end of the game against San Jose State? Boy, I was watching that on TV, and that was a game. It was so frustrating to watch. The Aztecs had a really good start in November, and this was one of their first games in December. And boy, they were laying an egg. They just couldn't score, and nothing was working. And San Jose State, definitely one of the worst teams in the Mountain West. And it came down to a three-pointer. Like as the buzzer was going off, it was a buzzer beater, and Malachi Flynn drained it, man. And that was just a great highlight, a great moment. So what is he going to be like in the NBA? I mean, I think he could potentially be like a Steph Curry. Curry can drive. He can shoot from long range. He can be a point guard. I see their games very similar. Malachi Flynn says he's modeling himself after Chris Paul. And he also talked about Van Vliet, who's a player. I don't really know much about him. I've heard his name. Does he play for Brooklyn, I think? I'm not sure. But both those guys, Chris Paul and Van Vliet, are undersized guards. And so it makes sense that he's modeling his game after them. So imagine if Malachi Flynn gets into the NBA. San Diego State would then have 3 guys, because right now there's Kawhi Leonard, of course, and then Jalen McDaniels, who was taken in the second round last year, and he is on the Charlotte Hornets roster. He was up and down with the G League there for a while, but he had been playing very well right before the NBA season was shut down. And so, Malachi Flynn could be the third Aztec in the NBA. It should be great. And then there's another one knocking on the door, and that's Zylan Cheatham, who played for the Aztecs and then played his final year at Arizona State. I follow Zylan Cheatham on Twitter, and he's unbelievable. This is another guy that's a big personality and really thinks a lot of himself. And he's kind of a little bit wacky too, but boy, does that guy have game. And you see some of the things he's doing on the court in the G League are unbelievable. The numbers he's putting up. So, and then Cheatham, what team would he be coming up with? Is it the Hawks? Can't remember what team he would be coming up with if he does make his debut in the NBA. So looking forward to seeing him out there. But yeah, I think we're still mourning the loss of the end of that Aztec season. It was they were so good, 30 wins and 2 losses. And now we're talking about next year, and they were originally going to be a top 25 team. But then once Malachi Flynn announced that he was going into the draft, well, now they've fallen out of the preseason top 25. And it's funny that they're making these really early predictions. But the Aztecs got a new guard coming in, Terrell Gomez from Northridge, and he's just a fantastic scorer, but he's only 5'8", so a really little guy. So it'll be fun to see him on the court as well. Is he the playmaker of Malachi Flynn? Who knows? Is he the defender? Probably not. He's got a lot to learn on defense. But from a scoring perspective, there might be some commonality, some similarity. So we'll see. Next year, assuming there is a next year, but next year, they'll have Terrell Gomez, and we're not going to have Joel Mensah any longer. So Joel Mensah, another one of the 6'10" guys, and he was a project. Apparently wasn't working out the way he had hoped, so he entered the transfer portal. Not sure where he's going to land, but we'll be rooting for Joel Mensah. But it's interesting how they announced that he decided to transfer, but sometimes I wonder really what happens in a private meeting with Coach Dutcher and the rest of the coaching staff. Did Joel Mensah want to transfer? My guess is he probably wanted to stay. I'm sure he wants more playing time, but this is a top, nationally ranked number 6 team in the country last year. Does he want to leave? So I wonder if it was more of a mutual decision, or maybe they just said, we're taking away your scholarship. I'm not sure what happened, but I wonder. So, Joel Mensah won't be there. So now there are 2 open scholarships, and the Aztecs have some work to do. But they've got to recruit, and how are you going to do that? Because no one's playing, and there's no summer league, and what's going to happen? So I don't know. But I will say that, the games at Viejas Arena are just fantastic. It's a great experience. And if you've never gone to an Aztec game on campus at San Diego State, I encourage you to do it. It's just so fun. And always get there early. Definitely, I love when they do the opening lineups. And when the lights go off and the music starts, and I just love that. And if you get there super early, like an hour early, you can see a lot of their warm-ups. And sometimes they'll be putting on a show, doing awesome slam dunks and things you normally wouldn't see during the game. But they'll have some fun out there. So I just love the Aztec program. I try to go to games, maybe 2 or 3 a year. I never miss a game when they're on TV. But wow. So, Malachi Flynn, we're going to wish him well going into the NBA. I think he has a chance to be very successful because he's just so smart. He knows what role to play, and he can defend, he can score, he can distribute. He's going to be able to do everything possible for a guy that's 6'1". But it is also interesting to think about what's going to happen next year. And they were interviewing the athletic director of San Diego State, and he was saying that, sports for the year 2021, from 2020 through 2021, next school year, there still is no guarantee there's going to be sports. Not just basketball, but everything. And he was saying how a lot of it depends on football, because football is a big revenue generator. Football is what provides a lot of the revenue that can, football and basketball provide a lot of the revenue that funds some of the sports that don't typically have huge numbers of fans show up. So all these other sports are dependent on the big revenue from football and basketball, especially football. Now, they should be starting spring camps here pretty quick if it were under normal times. And then the season usually begins in late August. And that's only 4 months away. So chances, if you're a betting man, if I'm a betting man, I don't think the season's going to start. And I know President Trump says he was hopeful that the NFL season would happen in the fall, but I don't know. My spidey senses are telling me that my spidey senses are tingling, and they're telling me that I don't think there's going to be sports in the fall. So then what happens? And then if there's no fall sports, there may not be a basketball season. And then into the spring, there may not be baseball. What's going to happen? I don't know. Interesting to speculate. Is the NBA coming back? Is Major League Baseball coming back? We're going to learn a lot. And, we always have David Leland on in these podcasts. Love talking sports with him. So hopefully we'll have sports back. I just miss it. Even on these weekends when I'm working on things, my projects or working on things around the house, I always love having a ball game on in the background. It's part of the way that I've lived my life and grown up, is always being around sports. I've never been a great athlete myself, but I've always loved the game. I've always been a big fan, and I miss it. But I do wish Malachi Flynn all the best wishes in the world, and I think he is ready. The funny thing is that when Kawhi Leonard came out after his sophomore year, when was that? Like 2011. I was the guy who was saying, oh, no, he still needs more time in college ball. And then, of course, he proved me wrong because he came out and he was great right out of the gate. So I've learned that lesson. If they're proving it on the court in college, you got to let them go. And they'll have an opportunity to make a lot of money. And if not in the NBA, they'll be making a lot of money overseas, in Europe, in South America and Mexico, and even in China. Jamal Franklin from the Aztecs is making over $1 million a year playing basketball in China. So even if these guys don't make the NBA, there's still a great opportunity to play the game you love, and get paid to do it. Wow. Would it be so fantastic for those guys? So anyways, great for him. Okay, I think we have a little time to get into this Swedish death cleaning, So let's talk about this. This is a funny story because I had not heard this term until maybe a week ago. And, during this whole, I said I wasn't going to talk about the whole COVID thing, but I brought it up numerous times in this podcast, but mostly peripherally. But one of my friends, she lives in Ohio, and she was doing a massive cleaning job in her house. And she referred to it as death cleaning. And I'm like, what do you mean? And the whole idea of it is that if you happen to die and your children come into your house, you don't want them going through all your shit, all your crap. You want to get it cleaned out and organized. And so, if that fateful day ever comes, then it's easier for the people that will pick up after you leave where you left off. And it's an interesting concept. And it makes me think about a lot of different things because, as we've had our children growing up, during those years, we accumulate a lot of stuff. And then, when they went away and they were, we were empty nesters there for a while. Now they've come back because of the whole COVID situation. But you realize you accumulate things, but then once they're gone, you realize a lot of the stuff that we have, we don't really need. And so I was always thinking about doing a lot of cleansing, a lot of purging, but never in the framework of this thing called a Swedish death cleaning. But I just want to read this. This is an article from Time Magazine. It's just some great excerpts that I want to share. So, and I'll include this link in the show notes. So from the article, I'll just read along. My mother has been hounding him, the father, for years to pare it down, but he hasn't been willing to budge until this year. In the past 12 months, 2 of my grandparents have passed away. And since then, my mom and dad have spent a huge chunk of time combing through and cleaning out their parents' homes, discarding and donating their possessions to anyone who would take them. It's been a wake-up call for my dad, especially who is suddenly encouraging me to take the items from their basement I've been eyeing for my own place. He said, "You're going to get it eventually, so you might as well take it now," he joked. And yeah, it is interesting. Now, I had to help my wife when her parents passed away, and we had to go through all their stuff and donate it. In some cases, we had a garage sale, and it's hard, to go through all that. So this is just an interesting thing. So apparently there's a Swedish word, and I'll read from the article. There's a Swedish word for my dad's newfound willingness to unload and declutter, and it's called dostadning. And it's a hybrid of the words for death and cleaning. And as morbid as it sounds, that's exactly what death cleaning is. It's the process of cleaning house before you die, rather than leaving it up to your loved ones to do it after you're gone. So this is just an interesting topic. So the death cleaning method bears similarities to that of tidying guru Marie Kondo. So maybe you've seen Marie Kondo, and she's always talking about, cleansing your space and getting rid of stuff you don't need to declutter. And she's wonderful. So death cleaning method bears similarities to that of the tidying up guru Marie Kondo. Keep what you love and get rid of what you don't. But while Kondo tells people to trash, recycle, or donate what they discard, Magnusson, who I guess is the one of the people pushing this Swedish death cleaning, recommends giving things you no longer want to family and friends. Like whenever they come over for dinner or whenever you catch up with them. So imagine like people come over to your house for dinner and like, hey, would you like to take this couch with you? Would you like some of this old china? To me, that's kind of funny. So maybe that works in the Swedish culture. I would have a little trouble trying to pass off my things to friends and neighbors when they come over to visit. And then finally, the article goes on to say, death cleaning may have benefits for the cleaners themselves and not just their loved ones. Some research suggests that clutter in the home can raise stress levels and reduce productivity. And as adults get older, having a house full of stuff may also raise their risk for falls and create other health and safety issues. So this is great. I mean, it's like George Carlin, he talked about you have so much stuff and you got to have a place for your stuff and you got to rent a storage hall or storage locker for your stuff. We accumulate a lot of stuff. And it's true, when there's more clutter, it does raise stress. And I know for me that whenever I'm going through a period of stress and, with my work or with other things going on in my life, the first thing that I do is I declutter. I clean my desk. And that in and of itself is very therapeutic, to go through and clean your environment. And then it has, for me, a decluttering effect in my mind at the same time, where my mind simplifies and my mind is cleansed. And then when I sit back down at my desk in a nice clean environment, I'm able to think more clearly and be able to prioritize things, and my stress level goes way down. So, the funny thing is that, during this whole COVID thing, we've been cleaning in our home. My wife actually has been doing a lot. And we have one closet in our dining room that over the years has just accumulated a lot of stuff. We got rid of all of we have cassettes that we've been hauling around for years, never listening to, from the 1980s. I still have the cassettes when I was in high school of Hall Oates and of Rush and of Tom Petty. But also we got rid of all of our CDs and our DVDs because we don't listen or watch them at all. Everything we do is streaming now. So my Lord of the Rings trilogy, I said goodbye to it. That Lord of the Rings trilogy, the DVD, it was meaningful to me. I remember in 2000 and I think it was 2, I fell off our roof putting up our Christmas lights, and frankly, I'm lucky I'm here. I was in the hospital for a week. I was out of work for 3 months. I was really, really messed up. And I remember during that recovery, I was able to watch The Fellowship of the Ring, the first of that series. And I really began to understand it a lot more. I would watch it multiple times. And so I kind of have a connection with that CD set. Or excuse me, the DVDs. But I said goodbye to those. I said goodbye to the Star Wars DVDs. I said goodbye to my Ken Burns baseball history DVD, which is great. But that Ken Burns baseball documentary is on Netflix. So, so we're just cleansing and purging. And I got to tip my hat to my wife. She did 99% of the work. But I took a look in our closet. It's like half of it is gone. So unbelievable. So I know some other people have been doing a lot of these kind of cleaning projects, but man, just chip away at it. It's good stuff. And but Swedish death cleaning, it's just a whole fascinating concept, a term I had never heard before, but it's a thing. And it makes sense. So I just thought I'd share a little bit about that. So, hey, if you want to continue the conversation, join us on Facebook. John Riley Project is our page there. I put all of our episodes up. We have a special insiders group just for people that are big fans of the podcast. We have a little more conversation there. So join the John Riley Project Insiders group on Facebook. It's a closed group, a private group. So you got to answer a couple of questions. We let everybody in. So join us there. And I'm also really active on Twitter. So you can look for me there on John Riley Poway is my handle on Twitter. And then, of course, on YouTube, fill out the actually, I should say on YouTube, first of all, subscribe, please, and subscribe to all of the other platforms. But also on YouTube, I love the interchange. I get a lot of comments on the podcast, and some of the viewers like to continue the conversation. Sometimes they challenge me. Maybe they're going through the sine wave as well. There are parts of the podcast they love, parts they hate, and the parts they hate, they let me know, and we talk it out. And it's fun, and I enjoy that conversation. It's never anger. It's never bitter. It's never crazy flame wars. It's just civil, rational discussion, just like I do with the guests that are on the podcast. So I have a couple of closing quotes, and these are both from Daryl Hall. And the first one's good. He says, "I have to say I have never been comfortable with somebody else telling me what to do in any way." And I love that. So, Daryl Hall is very proud of what he's accomplished. He's also an artist, and his art is personal to him. And he doesn't want to have his art compromised. He doesn't want to be told what to do. And I love that. And it reminds me of Ayn Rand's book, The Fountainhead, the architect that didn't want to compromise. But I respect artists that have integrity in what they do. And Daryl Hall is definitely one of them. Now, he did talk about, I think this was in the Charlie Rose interview, where they did a lot of those videos in the 80s. And he was saying how the director of the video was just like totally on cocaine in the middle of the night. And some of them ended up too goofy, and he regrets a lot of it. He wishes he didn't do much of it, but that's when they were young and they didn't really understand as much. But now that he's older, especially, he's just not taking crap from anybody, and he doesn't want to be told what to do. And I love that. I love that independent streak. I love the entrepreneurism. I love the artistry of that. So that's a great quote. "I have to say I've never been comfortable with somebody else telling me what to do in any way." And then the other quote he shared is good. He said, "Any song I don't feel good about, I shelve. Anything you ever hear me sing, it's because I want to." So it's another case of having integrity in what you produce, having pride in what you produce, not wanting to put out a subpar performance, making sure that what you deliver is important and meaningful to you. So those are great words to live by. And frankly, for me, as a guy that's cranking out these podcast episodes, that's important for me to keep in mind too, because I will admit some of my podcasts, and if you're a frequent listener or viewer, some are better than others. But still, every one of the things I talk about are things that I want to say. That's why I get organized and get in front of this microphone and do it. But I love what he said there. "Any song I don't feel good about, I shelve. Anything you ever hear me sing, it's because I want to." So that's trusting his gut. That's trusting his intuition. And it's also satisfying himself that he can take pride in what he does, because when he's on stage and he's performing, it's got to be real. It's got to be authentic, and it's got to come from the heart, from a meaningful place. For Daryl Hall, it has to come from the soul. And so if he's not believing it, it's not going to come off right. And he nailed it. So as an artist, that's a beautiful quote. "Any song I don't feel good about, I shelve. Anything you hear me sing, it's because I want to." So those are just great quotes for life in general. Take pride in what you do, put out the best possible product you have. Don't let anyone push you around and try to get you to do things you don't want to do. Stand up for yourself, have self-esteem. Just great stuff. So Daryl Hall, man, he's 73. John Oates is 72. I'm hoping that we get a chance to see them, but I don't know when concerts are going to start up again. So maybe in 2021, but by that time they're going to be 74 and 73 and one step closer to the finish line for their career. So who knows? But anyways, hey, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. This is the John Riley Project. It's episode number 128, and it's April 19th, 2020. So have a great day, friends, and we'll catch you later. Bye-bye.